Good evening. Thanks to everybody for coming out tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. It is now 5 o'clock on the nose. We will call the meeting to order. Kathy, do we have a quorum? Yes, we do. Okay. Please, if everybody could, put your cell phones on vibrate or silent, whatever you do there. And could we stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We've got you see, we got a lot of people up here tonight. Over there, you've got our finance committee that's been working on this year's budget as they work on every year's budget. Over here, you've got the board of directors, and I'm just going to, you know what, Chuck, start with you, and let's just do introductions all the way up and then down this way.
Committee member.
Shirley Brose, committee member.
Wendell Jackson, committee member.
Mary Ellen Glantz, committee member.
Jim Morgan, general manager.
Del Mitchum, director.
Pat Kite, director.
David Matucci, director.
Kathy Stevens, secretary.
Greg Ross, vice president.
And Bruce D'Alfonso, president. What we're going to do tonight is walk through the budget. The finance committee is going to present the budget, not in quite as much detail as what they did last week, but more high level. Then as we go through it, if the board has questions, they can ask. And then I've had a bunch of sheets turned in for questions, so we will go through those at the end. But right now, the rest of this meeting, Chuck, it's your meeting. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Oh, one other thing. We will do a hard stop after 2 hours at 7 o'clock.
Very good. Thank you for all of you coming today. This was, I think, the largest turnout that I've ever experienced since I've been on the Finance Committee for many years. And so I do appreciate everyone's participation in coming out this evening. Without further ado, would you please turn the slide? So anyway, I just wanted to give a very brief overview of the budget process that we do here at the Colony. We basically have 3 different phases. We have a development phase, a budget evaluation process phase, and the final budget phase. Well, the first phase usually begins right here with the HOA office. We have department heads, Ken, Anthony, Kimberly, and Kara. They have their own vendors, and they start out doing the due diligence with them, contacting them, trying to get cost projections, evaluating whether bids are necessary, and they start doing this in the end of the year, back in December. Contracts and costs are reviewed by Jim Morgan. He then meets with all of his department heads, and finally Jim brings me into the process, and we go over the budget. We start reviewing and checking out the cost, having the department heads going back to certain vendors to get new cost, or we look for additional bids. Finally, Jim and I put together a budget, and we bring it to the Finance Committee, and we go into the budget evaluation process. This is when our team here starts to really dig into the finance of each line item. They start to review the current budget data points of all the line items to see where we are, whether we're under budget, over budget, and they start looking at the current projections to see if it makes sense and they're realistic and appropriate. They do a lot of challenging, and we end up going back and we end up doing multiple drafts. Adjustments are often made, and then finally at some point the Finance Committee is satisfied with the product, and then we bring it to the board as a proposed draft, and we did that at the workshop last week. So that would be bringing us to the final budget evaluation. What we're going to be bringing to you tonight is also a draft. It hasn't been approved and ratified yet, but it has gone through a number of iterations already. The board at the workshop evaluates it, they ask questions, and they do further challenging. And in some instances, we will go back and we'll do other revisions and make changes and certainly do certain other research. After that process is over, we finally bring the budget to you, to the homeowners, to give you guys an opportunity to look at it and then hear what you have to say about it, which we're very interested in for your feedback as well. And you'll have that opportunity at the end of our presentation. So that's basically it in a nutshell. And thank you for bearing with me. Please turn to the next slide. So we start out when we do our presentations talking about our expenses first. You got a summary sheet when you came in here, which shows the summary of all the different budget items for the expenses. Those are all the different categories. And right now we're going to go into it by each category, and we're going to start to drill down a little bit. The first category is administrative, and I'm the lucky one. I'm going to be doing that myself. So in the interest of brevity, we had a 2.5, 3 hour meeting when we did the workshop, and we went through all the line items, even the line items where there were no variances, or even the line items where we had a decrease. But tonight, I want to focus on the areas where we have the biggest variances and the biggest increases, because I think those are the areas that are impacting the budget the most. So on the first slide, we have line 33, bad debt. As you'll notice, in the 22-23 budget, if you look over the second to the right column, you will see that's where we currently exist in the 2022-23 budget period. We had a budget of $8,000, and what we're doing, we are proposing an increase of going from $8,000 to $15,200, or a variance of $7,200. Basically, this line covers lost revenue due to an owner's failure to pay respective assessments. The board will typically write off uncollectible bad debt near the end of each fiscal year. This increase is in line is due to the anticipated losses attributable to 25% of the main gate maintenance cost that the golf course is responsible for. The golf course is responsible for about $600 per month, which is deemed uncollectible at this time since we have been funding their losses. So that amount that we're increasing of $7,200 is equal to the $600 per month. The next line I want to bring your attention to is line 37, committees. Now here we have a budget of $6,000 currently, and we're proposing to go up to $7,000, which is an increase of $1,000. Now this line primarily covers the voluntary appreciation lunch for many people here in the colony give their time and they volunteer for the myriad of committees, the Emergency Preparedness Committee and many others. So as our token of appreciation, we give them an appreciation lunch every year, and this is the lion's share of that cost, which is approximately $6,000, which basically covers the catered food and live entertainment, plus another $1,000 thrown in for other ancillary expenses that will come up during the year for the committees. The next line I want to bring your attention to is 41, delinquency charges. This line is a new line. As you can see, there was nothing budgeted in the year 2022 and 23, and we're now asking and recommending a $2,000 line item for delinquency charges. Well, it represents work performed by corporate staff to process delinquencies. These are hard costs that are billed to the association the month the work is performed. If the association is successful in recovering the cost and the homeowner brings their account current, the management company will reimburse the association for the cost. If unsuccessful, the association bears these costs. So we are conservatively projecting about $2,000 that could potentially be uncollectible for that amount. The next line I want to bring your attention to is office equipment and maintenance, down at the bottom of the page. We had a $7,000 line item in the year 2022 through 23 budget, And in the next budget that's starting in May, we're proposing an increase to $22,000 or an increase of $15,000. Why? Good question. The line is divided into two separate components. Firstly, we have recently reviewed bids on 3 copier companies, which we talked about at a prior open session board meeting, and we had chosen one. So part of the component is the new copier service, which is going to run about just under $8,000 a year. The second component is for contracted IT services to maintain and protect 12 staff computers and private information contained therein. The IT services are currently out for competitive bidding, by the way. So the amount we are throwing out there is a high bid. It's the bid that we currently have, but we're competitively bidding, and we're hoping that we can bring it down. The next line is on the next page. Next slide, please. The next line is line 46. It's the third line from the top. It's election services. This line covers the cost to the association for hiring a third-party election service company to conduct annual election of board members as well as other elections that might occur throughout the year. The new law requires that elections are handled by third-party election services rather than members of the community. This, as a result, makes this line item necessary. The increase reflects the possibility of a future election during the coming fiscal year. The next line that I'm going to talk about is line number 49 in the middle of the page. That's printing and copying. We had a $33,000 budget in 22-23, and we're now recommending a modest increase of $3,000 to $36,000. This line represents all copies made with the leased copy machine. It also includes all offset copying that we do for various mailings that occur throughout the year. Line number 51 is the next one that I want to talk about. This is salaries and benefits. This line is going up from $997,165 in the 2022-23 budget to a proposed $1,078,963, or an increase of just under $82,000 in the coming year. This line reflects a 5% increase in hourly pay rates that the Finance Committee is recommending. The overall impact is actually 8.2% due to other factors, such as workers' compensation and other insurance benefits. The next line is line 52. Insurance premiums, right below it. Insurance premiums were at $78,000 in the 2022-2023 fiscal budget, and we're recommending that it be increased $10,000 to $88,000. The association paid approximately $78,000 in premiums during the current year. However, our insurance carrier, Labara Oxney, believes that the coverage for earthquake insurance will significantly rise to potentially a 12% increase. Moreover, our other premiums are expected to go up in the 5 to 6% range or even more. So our other policies, being that they're increasing along with earthquake, we are budgeting a 10% increase at $10,000 to protect ourselves this year as far as insurance premiums on the rise, largely due to inflationary pressures as well. The next line is line 55, internet services. This line on line 55 is just a modest increase from $15,000 to $16,000 or $1,000. And it covers internet services that the association must have to carry out its day-to-day operations. These include the various gates at Jackson, Nutmeg, and Cal Oaks. We are increasing this line modestly, just $1,000. The next line is line number 59, and it's on the next page. Next slide, please. So it's the third one from the top. It's consulting services. We're requesting an increase from $20,000 to $25,000, or a $5,000 increase, or 25%. The line represents our calling services provided by Henriksen Experiential. The association believes that using these services on a consulting as-needed basis is much more cost-effective than having a full-time person, which could easily be a 6-digit salary, for on-site audio-video production support, such as the board meetings and other activities. Jake Henriksen is the consultant. He provides invaluable training to the Communications and Technology Advisory Committee, whose staff is now taking on some of the work previously provided by Jake, because Jake is also training people. So we're proposing an increase of $5,000 from $20,000 to $25,000 there. Finally, on line 62, legal services lawsuits. We had a $75,000 budget item for our lawsuits with Majestic last year on the two lawsuits. We're proposing an increase to $120,000 because we went well over budget this year. This would cover us for the two main lawsuits with Majestic, which is the performance deed as well as the alleged fraudulent lien deed. So we have two particular distinct lawsuits going with Majestic, and in the event that there are appeals, we believe that the amount that we're budgeting would cover that as well. And that would conclude total administrative. The amount that's going up on administrative this year, it's going from last year, $1,663,000 to $1,831,000, which is an increase of about $168,000, and that's about 10.2% increase, but it's largely due to the legal and to a degree salaries. And that would be equivalent to about $96 per door per month of the HOA fees, an increase of $8.83 from last year's budget. And that concludes administrative. Thank you. Next slide, please. The next one is the golf course subsidy. I'm handling that one too. The golf course subsidy, as everybody knows, is the big elephant in the room. We've been talking about it for the last few board meetings, and back in November I gave projections that the HOA assessment on the golf course could be anywhere from $13 to $16. Well, it turns out the projections that we got from the receiver, which are court-ordered, are coming in at around $300,000. That would result in a $16 HOA fee increase per month per door. And as a result, the golf course subsidy is now a line item in our budget, where in the year 2022-23 it was not. And as a result, we were using equity to fund it. Now, with it being a line item, we won't have to take it from equity anymore because it will be coming directly out of the HOA fees. And that should conclude the golf course subsidy section. Thank you. Communications are the activities that Kara and our event staff puts together, all the performances that we have throughout the year. We had a wonderful one on Sunday evening, and it's a wash. As you'll see, there's nothing budgeted. The reason is we spend money for the entertainment, and then we get money and we recoup it back through the ticket sales. So net at the end of the year, ideally it turns out to be a wash. Ergo, it doesn't present itself as a line item on the budget. Thank you. Next slide. And now we have utilities, and we've divvied up the sections amongst the Finance Committee staff.
Thank you, Chuck. I'll take utilities. The nice thing about talking about the utilities is everyone in this room has a touchstone for the cost of utilities increasing. We're looking at electric service on line 79. Next slide, please. Thank you. We are moving from $105,000 in the current budget to $120,000 for the new budget, or an increase of $15,000. We are already, for 8 months this year, trending over the budget, and this is primarily due to high electric usage in the summer months for our air conditioning. We are anticipating an increase in Southern Cal rates as well. We're recommending that this line be increased by $15,000 for the next year, and the amount will allow for anticipated increase in power service that are to be imposed by SoCal Edison. The next line is line 80, the gas services. This line right now is under the budget for 8 months by about $4,800. But that won't stay that way. Jim Morgan told us at our last meeting that he had received a bill across his desk just as we were putting this budget together for just under $20,000. So now we're over budget, or we will be for 9 months. We are moving from $65,000 to $140,000, which is a $75,000 increase. And this is primarily attributable to the fact that the gas costs are currently reflecting spring and summer months to date. The fall and winter months will increase as gas consumption is increased, and we are anticipating that gas rates will increase by 100%, as you've all seen as you opened your mail or opened your email. We're recommending that this line, again, be increased by $75,000, and this will allow for a significant increase in services that we anticipate by the gas company. The remainder is recommended as a safety net to cover potential increase in the number of cold days as we move through the winter. This is the cost to heat the pool and the spas during the summer months. And as the days are cold, it takes more energy to heat the pool and the spas during these months. It is this committee's recommendation to our board that they consider the shutting down of the pool heater during the winter months, as this is the period when the cost for gas is the greatest and the use of the pool is the least. So that's just a consideration that we ask them to discuss as a board of directors. The other lines that I have under utilities are water, trash and cycling, and cable TV, lines 81, 82, and 83. They're very minor amounts of increase, and the cable is actually a decrease. Utilities in total move from $192,200 in our current budget up to $283,700 in the new budget, which is about 4.5% of the total increase. So it's an 11.5% increase 1 year over the other. So then I move your attention to landscaping.
All right, my landscaping budget. This includes it's around 28% right now of the total budget. So landscaping is one of the heavy hitters here. I think administrative costs are the highest, and then landscaping comes in at that. See, am I on? No, our first line, 6,100. This is for water. Now, there's a lot of discussion about water, not watering. We looked at it and felt that we need to keep it at the same. This is because water rates are increasing, and also the water companies, Elsinore and Rancho, are creating a tier system. If you look at your water bill, you're going to see different tiers. And Anthony's been tracking that, and we are moving into the higher tiers. The more water we use goes into the higher tiers, and that is an expensive, higher rate. So we feel that just to be conservative, it's better to concentrate on the same amount. We're not increasing or decreasing, it's keeping it neutral. That's our reasoning. The next ones you'll see from lines 89 to 96. No, not 96, 95. These are the contract. This is the contract. This is the contract we have with Environmental Concepts, our landscaping division, our landscaping subcontractor or contractor. These are, you'll see the budget there of 23, 24. This is their proposed increases. We budgeted that just because we're not in this position right now. We're going to be, Jim is going to be looking at this, and Anthony, and seeing if there's any pushback, we can get it lowered. But right now, these are just their position. So it's sort of like they go and then we go back and forth. So it's going to be open to negotiation, but we are budgeting for what they proposed. So we have that in our, to go forward with. The next two items, let's see. Let's look at tree trimming and for front yards. That's an increase there, a small increase. Each year, we look at trees. Anthony looks at every tree. Believe it or not, he's out there looking at every tree, and he makes a decision, should it be pruned or not. In their contract, EC, Environmental Concepts, presents when you, and that's outside the contract. Any tree below 15 feet is in the contract. Any tree over 15 feet is outside the contract. We have between 5,000 and 6,000 trees. The ratio is 3 to 1. Over 15 feet, 3, under 15 feet, 1. So the majority of our trees are over 15 feet. EC has increased those costs. It's a unit cost, so they do it by tree. And with that, Anthony felt that, and we looked at it, we felt that we needed to increase it somewhat because you need to have your trees trimmed. But Anthony, we don't trim it if it doesn't need to be trimmed. Anthony does a very good job of looking at that. The next area down is, let's see, go to line 99, palm tree trimming. Again, it is a per unit, per tree cost. And we have increased it because we have a lot of trees that are getting over 15 feet. Now, these rates they give us are for 3 years. And we're looking at this. Should we get the same rate now as we get in 3 years? Shouldn't it be lower now, then increase a little bit, then increase a little bit more instead of all at once? Though it does last 3 years. So we're going to, I believe Jim is going to be looking at that, and Anthony, to seeing if we can push back with EC to get them to consider, instead of one big lump sum increasing up front, to phase it in. That may be some savings there. But we are budgeting for the initial, initial outlay. Now, palm trees, we do it once a year. Once a year, I think it's in the summer, you'll see them out there with their cherry pickers and that, cutting down. We have to cut the palm trees. We do the pool area twice. Because if you don't cut them, chances they'll fall. The fronds will fall. So for safety reasons, we do it once a year in the summer. Also, I think they have berries, and you try and catch them before the berries start falling and messing things up. So those are the two big items that we have in the landscaping. I think that covers it. Now, overall, I said it's 28.3% is the total budget. The increase we have proposed is 4.2% overall budget for landscaping. EC's contract increase right now is 4.56%. So that basically covers, let me talk about mulch, just mulch. Everybody loves to talk about mulch. We have a budget. We increased the budget last year to by $20,000 to $50,000. That was the start covering the replenishment of the greenbelt areas that were converted from grass to plants now. We figured, the landscape committee feels after 5 years, you need to start replenishing that mulch. So last year, the board did increase it by $20,000, and Anthony is going to start, the landscape committee and Anthony is going to start looking at the areas that were done 5 years ago. If there's a schedule out there. And we will see, do we need to replenish it or not? And we will have the $20,000 we increased will be going toward the replenishment. The $30,000 will be Anthony's rotation of doing the front yard mulch. So that's our budget there. Who's doing gate entry?
Yes, on gate entry and patrol services, the line number 113 is basically contractual. We have a 4.3 increase for wages for the guard shack and for the other employees of the guard company. So we're recommending a $27,500 roughly increase, which is again by contract. Property protection services is remaining on supplies, trending about equal, so that's no increase there. And vehicle gate repair, and this is for when somebody hits the gates, hits the arms. Most of them we are able to discover who did them and bill them, but sometimes there are instances that we cannot tell who did it. And so we're changing that to upping that about $2,000 just as a safety valve. Lastly, and this is a negative figure, and the gate access system, which we currently have, is going to be, as you know, is going to be going out the window because Nordic, that does our security, has their own system, and as long as we stay with them as a in their contract, they will pay us, or give it to us free so we don't have to pay them. And that would be a reduction of about $2,200, which brings the total increase in guard and access is about $27,260, which is about 4.25% of the budget. Next.
Repair and maintenance. Briefly, if you look at the line items up there, once they get posted. There we go. Two of the line items are flat. Line 122, fire prevention equipment, and actually 3 lines, and 125 is no change, and 126 is no change. Lines 124 and 127 are only a $100 increase over last year. And line 123, the HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system, this includes the cost of the preventative maintenance of 10 HVAC units, including a 30-ton unit that services this auditorium, 5 mini split air conditioning systems throughout the facilities, and it also includes the upgraded air filters. Also included is money to cover costs and repairs and unforeseen failures of the system in as much as it is aging. Therefore, we're recommending a modest increase from $12,000 to $15,000 in light of the aging of the equipment, which is a $3,000 increase, and for this entire section of repair and maintenance, the total increase of $3,200 is a 4.3% increase over last year's budget.
All right. I'm back with Clubhouse expenses, or operations. The board has some issues, I can say that, last time, with our pool maintenance and chemical contract and trying to understand just what we did there. Do you want me to go into detail with that, or you all were concerned that there was $10,000 missing? Well, I know where it went. It didn't go anywhere. It was there. I just didn't present it right, correctly. And I realized that when I got home, I saw the original proposal. Oh, there it is. So if you'd like to go into it now, detail, or wait for questioning, or what is your pleasure?
Might as well cover it now.
Okay, all right. Beg pardon? Right, yes. All right. Go to line, okay, 130, what is it?
136.
Yeah, go to line 136. All right. You will see there that we have a contract. It's pool management. That includes a contracted service to clean the pool and take care of the pool. It also, before, included chemicals. Now, when we looked at this on the first draft of the budget, our first go-through, we had recommended raising it from $22,000 to $31,500. That was an increase of $9,500. The reason we did that is that we had contacted the management company who was providing that, and he said his services for cleaning is probably going to be at $14,000. He also said that the chemicals are going up. Now, Jim had invoices, he tracked invoices of $16,000 that we have spent on chemicals. The contractor said, we'll probably go up another 8%. So when we looked at that, we thought $31,500 was a good figure to cover both the pool maintenance of $15,000 and on the chemicals of $16,000. Well, chemicals gets lost in there, and the committee, finance committee, looking at that said, let's pull it out so we can track it better and just leave the maintenance part of the contract in this line and create a new one down there on line 143 of pool chemicals. So we moved that $16,000 from that line that was $31,500 down to the chemical line, leaving $15,500 in that line. So if you look at that now, that is the budget we have for the chemical the management of the pool of $15,500, and the chemicals come down to $16,000. That is a total of what we increased it. So the $9,500, I think what the board might have looked at said, well, you're decreasing it, it's only $6,500 to bring down the chemicals. Actually, it was more than that. It's just the way the math appears. It looks like we decreased it $6,500, where's the $10,000 to bring up to $16,000. Again, it was always in there under chemicals, just combined, and we separated out. So that is why the $10,000 y'all questioned happened. Okay? And we can talk about it after the presentation. Okay, I'm just going to talk about some of the three other areas that we increased, when I say significantly by $5,000, is the, where's my notes here? Look at line, let's see. 133, 6417, 133. Okay, closed circuit TV and that. That includes this closed circuit, what we have. The budget was for $6,000, I've lost myself there. Yeah, for $10,000, we've increased $5,000. We are depending more on closed circuit. It's just, you know, you see what we're doing here. Right now, this is all closed circuit. We're expanding our capabilities and making it more efficient. So also, with inflation, we felt that we needed to go up $5,000 from $10,000 to $15,000. Also, the next one down, going down to line 635, janitorial supplies and maintenance. We increased it there from $30,000 to $35,000. That's $5,000. That's basically because we have been over budget, and it is increasing. Again, inflation is a big factor here. All the companies that we deal with are reacting to the inflation. And so they are raising it to us, and we feel we have to correspondingly raise the fees in that, what we're budgeting. Let's see. The last one is 6,700, 144 recreational sponsored events. Okay, we went from 10,000 to 15,000. This is what Kara spends on the activities for us that we do not get, we do not charge you for. There are a number of those that she goes out there and she, you know, contracts, brings people in, and they present things for us. And there's not any charge to you all to attend them. We have to pay for it, and this is Kara's budget. So that's the increase there of $5,000. Overall, that section increased. Do I have it? Yes, increased $23,000. The overall increase $23,000, or around 29%. A lot of that is because, again, of the increase in the chemicals. That was the big issue there. And the overall budget, this clubhouse expenses is only 3% of the overall budget. But we did have a big increase because of the chemicals. So.
On to income taxes. Next slide, please. We don't have change from our current budget to the proposed budget for federal, California, state, or real estate taxes. And while there's no change, it's important to talk about income taxes because a lot of people say, why in the world would we have to pay income taxes? We pay income taxes on what's considered non-related income. So anything that we receive income for that doesn't have to do with us being in business as a homeowners association. So we don't pay any income tax on our homeowners assessments, but we do pay income tax on the interest that we make on the money that is in our banks and our securities. We also pay income tax on the rent that we receive from, for instance, our beauty shop and salon. And then there are expenses that are taken off of those costs, are those incomes, such as utilities and part of the management fee and part of the audit fee and so on. And then we pay federal taxes at 30% of the bottom line and state at 8.87. There is no change because we have an overpayment that we've carried forward for 2 years. Even though our interest revenue is going up, this year's revenue is being paid for in next year's budget, just like we pay our taxes in April based on the prior year. And our interest has increased this year, which is good news, but we do have to pay tax on it next year, which is not so good news. But it's a small amount, and we do have a carryover. So the $10,000 federal and the $5,000 state that we have budgeted, plus the carryover for overpayment, will certainly satisfy our federal and state tax obligations. Then we have a small amount of property tax that we pay for the lot that we purchased on the corner of Avenida Florita and Colony Drive, and we are asking that we get a tax exemption from the county, and we've applied for that, but we haven't received it yet. And so the real estate taxes for that particular piece of property is about $700. We don't expect any increase in that, so those three budget items remain the same as they were in our current budget.
The next slide, please. There's nothing in other expenses this year or last year. Next slide, please. Reserves. Thank you. So our reserves were $971,995, and now we're proposing an increase to $1,069,186. This is largely based because our reserve specialist consultant every 3 years comes out and does an on-site inspection, and this year was that year. And he had come out and he did an on-site inspection, and he is proposing and recommending that we increase reserves 10% to cover the cost for our projections in the coming year. Moreover, he's taken into account the inflationary pressures that we've been experiencing. And the good news is that, as you all may recall, we were at a funding level approximately 63% this time last year, and the proposed increase will bring us up to about 66%, which would be considered, we would no longer be considered, technically speaking, underfunded once we cross the 65% threshold. Thank you. So this is a summation of the expenses. Next slide, please. So the variance, so we had a cost budget last year of about $5.4 million. This million we're proposing to increase budget to about just under $6.2 million, which is just under an $800,000 variance. Next slide, please. This shows you how we're breaking the expenses down, showing you under how we assort it from the highest expenses to the least expenses. Our highest expenses, we have 4 line items that are over 4 categories that are double digit. General administration is the biggest expense to the colony. It's almost 30%, and it is equivalent to about a cost of $96 per home. $96.21 of our HOA goes to that particular category. Landscaping is coming right underneath it at 28.3%, or around $92 per household. Reserves is $56, and property protection is around $37, or 11.4%. So those are the four main areas, and they comprise, believe it or not, 75% of our budget. Next slide, please. And this is a pie chart. As you'll see, the 30% in the blue and the 28% in the green and the 17% in the yellow, that's the general administration. That is also the landscaping and the reserves. That's 75% of our budget's tied up in those three categories. And the 6 remaining categories are in the other 25%, or 1/4 of the pie, which is a visual of where our budget stands. Next slide, please. So now we're coming to the income portion of our budget, and probably the area that you'd be most concerned about, since it's affecting pocketbooks and HOA fees. So the left-hand side shows the current budget next to the new budget. And you'll see that we had colony expenses of $5.4 million, and our new budget's measured at $5.9 million, roughly. Now at the bottom, where the HOA assessments, last year, it went down to $5.1 million only. Why? Because we had that equity subsidy, where we reduced, artificially deflated our HOA assessment, which should have been $279. We brought it down to $270 to provide a little relief for everybody. But now we're going to pay the piper. So if we look over at the far right column, this is how we arrive at our HOA assessment. Colony expenses comprise $25.60, or 9.5% of our assessments. The golf course is equivalent to $16 that we talked about a few minutes ago. We're going to get a little offset from other income, which we'll talk about that again in a few moments. But there's the equity subsidy that we're going to have to make up. We have to make up that gap from last year because we're coming from $270 instead of where we should have been $279. So that brings us to the $50 assessment. In the middle column, where you have the dollars, it shows the changes from the prior budget. Those are the net changes, where we have a $951,600 variance, or $50, which is equivalent to 18.5% increase of our HOA assessment over the $270 from last year. Next slide, please. This is the colony income sources. Well, some of our money is coming from other sources. 98.3%, yes, it's coming from us, coming from each household here in the form of an HOA assessment. But we're getting a little bit from 1.3% from fines, fees and fines, and in a perfect universe, that would be 0, because we would love to have 100% compliance. But we're not living in a perfect universe. And then we have other income, which is interest earned, which comes in very marginally at 0.4%. So our cost per home is $325.46. We're paying $320, but the cost per home at the bottom on the right-hand margin is actually $325.46, but we're getting the other $5.46 from other income sources. That concludes the income section. And then, next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. So this is what it looks on the budget line. So the slides that I just showed you are parallel. There's the variance of $951,600. There's the budget of $6,090,240. Now that's just the budget item for HOA assessment, not the total budget. Why? Because it doesn't include the other income section. Next slide, please. And this is the other income section. So the other, we had other income last year of $264,000. This year it's only what? $104,000. Why? We're not getting that equity subsidy. The golf course settlement, long gone. The equity subsidy, nope, we're not doing it. So as a result, we've actually diminished in our other income close to $160,000. So this is all the different areas where we get money. Here's the salon rental, which Shirley talked about a little while ago. We get them for move-in and move-out fees, landlord fees. There's the different fines that you have. If you've ever been in a violation committee meeting, you'll know what that is. And then there's the interest earned. So that basically is the other income section. Next slide, please. And I'm going to turn this over to Jerry. He made this report for your benefit. It's the discretionary expenses in the colony.
Throughout the budget, we have numerous line items, several hundred, and buried within them are certainly some areas that the board could consider cutting, which would reduce our dues. But I went through and took a look at what some people refer to as low-hanging fruit, only for purposes of presenting it on the screen to show you what are other potential areas of reduction in expenses. But of course, this is entirely up to the board. But just wanted to let you know what we're spending for these 8 items. The annual committee appreciation luncheon for all committees is $7,000. Holiday decorations, exterior and interior, are $9,000. Subscriptions, Union Tribune, Press Enterprise, Netflix, HBO, Amazon, $1,256. Indoor plant maintenance for the clubhouse, $6,500. Clubhouse supplies that are described there are $8,000. Coffee for the clubhouse, believe it or not, annually is $10,000. Recreation-sponsored events, which are described there, are $15,000. And staff uniforms are $5,500. The grand total is just over $62,000. And do you have the bottom part of this slide? There we go. Thank you. So we have $62,256, which broken down on a monthly basis is $3.27 per homeowner. And the $62,256 divided by the proposed budget amount equals 1% of the total budget, actually 1.004%. And one thing to keep in mind, it takes a cut of $19,032 to reduce the budget by $1, the monthly dues by $1. Thank you.
Next slide. I believe that concludes the presentation.
Is that the excuse me, that the last slide? Okay, it is. Yep. All right, what I'll do first, open it up. Board, any questions on what you heard? Anything different today from the other night? And I'll go ahead and start it. Bob. Those chemicals. All right. First off, that makes more sense. That cleared it up for me a bit.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I apologize. I looked at 2 separate line items and didn't realize that interaction.
That's why we do these workshops and walk through them. It's still a large, I don't have it in front of me. It's still a large increase.
Right.
I'm assuming, I'm going to take a stab here, and you tell me if I'm on, first off, the prices of chemicals are going up, like everything else is, and did you guys went through the invoices to date for this year?
We did not. We just went on the figure that Jim gave us. We don't.
Okay.
I'll defer to
Jim, did you look at?
To date, we've, well, I shouldn't say to date, as of December, which
Okay,
is our
that's
current
fine, yeah.
financials. Right now, we've spent just over $10,000 in chemicals alone, with 4 months left in the fiscal year.
So 10,000, okay. And I also then, I know compared to previous years, this was a pretty hot summer. You use a lot of chemicals in the summer, is that?
Yeah, well, the numbers are based on going to our current service provider who provides these chemicals to us and their projections of what they believe it's going to take to do the job based on our contract with them and their frequency coming in and of course the conditions we've been under with the fluctuations in our climate, our temperatures and things like that. So if there is a way to bring that number down, it will likely be through shopping the market. When we approach the budget, there typically isn't time to go out to bid on all of our different services or compare pricing to the level of, like for instance, the chemicals against other providers. It's what are we doing today? What is it going to cost to do what we're doing today, tomorrow, or in the next fiscal year? So that's the snapshot you have in front of you. Things can be improved if we roll up our sleeves and look at options to try to improve that.
Okay. Yeah, Chuck.
I wanted to also point out that when the budgets were made like last year, they were going off the prior year when we were coming out of COVID and there was very little activity in the pool and the chemical costs were way low because of usage in the pool. So so the following year when they were doing the budget, when they did an increase, it was a modest increase based on prior COVID periods. So it was artificially deflated, working off the old budget. As a result, when things became normal and chemicals got back to normal usage, not to mention the fact that, of course, prices went up way big on everything, including chemicals, it really exploded. So there was a couple factors there that needs to be taken into consideration.
One other factor as well, if I could, many people don't know because we were able to mitigate the situation before it became apparent. We actually experienced a shortage in chlorine this last year. And we, to the credit of Ken, my maintenance manager, we went out looking for chlorine so we stockpiled it with the expectation that our service provider would not even be able to bring us chlorine which would cause us to have to close the pool if we didn't have the chemicals to manage it properly. The health department would close us down. So as a result of that industry scare, that also has played into the chemical increases we're experiencing ongoing as well.
Della, did you have a question? Did you?
Going back to, do you recommend maybe shutting down the pool during the winter months, aside from saving tens of thousands of dollars in gas? Would that also ultimately reduce chemical usage since it'd be a lot cooler in there?
Absolutely. It would reduce chemicals because the chlorine will be working in a temperature that will be more conducive to the air outside temperature-wise. The hotter the water is, the harder it is to keep the chemicals balanced in the pool. So yes, it would. So let me just for an example, is coming out of COVID, where we were hit the hardest with COVID and the pool was shut down for a good part of that time. We spent less than $6,000 in chemicals that year. That's a big, and now the spas were open, so that accounts for the 6,000, but in part for the pool as well, but significantly less.
All right, I'm going to jump to another section. We talked last week when we met. We threw out 3 different areas for potential increases for revenue: the move-in and out fees, the landlord fees, and the salon rental. Did you guys have any opportunity to look into that? I know it's only been a few days.
I have.
Oh, I'm looking the wrong way. Okay.
The salon is a separate thing. You as a board can negotiate what that increase is going to be with Jim Roybal. That business relationship is entirely contingent upon what you work out with him. But the other 2 that you mentioned are a little more complicated. They're absolutely attainable, but it's going to require the board go through the rule change process. We would not, because it's in our current rules and the prices, the costs associated to those 2 lines are identified in your rules and regulations, you'll be required to go and propose a rule change, go out for 28-day review period, and adopt it that way. I am confident we would not be able to resolve that prior to this budget needing to be approved. So if you were to consider increasing those lines, I would be very cautious in doing that based on the fact that you may not end up with the original number you were targeting. So just keep that in mind as you approach that.
Now we can have open session discussion on that.
With regards to the salon rental, Wendell Jackson did do some homework on that. Did you want to speak in on it, Wendell, what your findings were?
Well, on like kind of businesses, other words, other salons, I checked what the going rate was, and basically runs to $2.50 to $2.80 a square foot. We rent out, I think it's 575 square feet in our salon. Now that figure of $250 to $280 a square foot is not including gas consumption. In other words, utilities, electricity, air conditioning, that's always added on top of those. So if we were to use those figures without even using the utility upgrade, you're looking more like $1,400 per month.
All right, thank you. That's good information.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah,
Bruce?
go ahead.
Shirley, when you were talking about the winter months, which months did you mean? What do you consider winter months?
Well, certainly the cold months, December, January, February, maybe part of March, depending on when our
So maybe
weather breaks.
4 months?
Probably four to 5 months, yes.
Okay.
November can be cool, as you know, and so if we would close it November 1 and reopen it at the end of March.
And also, if we lowered it, heat during the summer, like July and August and September, would that help? Because it runs 85 degrees all year long?
I think it's 82, isn't it?
No, right now it's at 85.
Okay.
And, points have been made about the ambient temperature. It's a 50-degree swing if you look at it in the middle of the night on some cold nights. And that's a lot of work for the heaters to maintain an 85-degree temperature, which it can't. It absolutely drops in temperature overnight. But the heaters are on 24/7 during this time of year. So to answer one of the questions that you had asked about the timing, some of my other communities I've managed at where they did not have an indoor pool and were faced with these same types of situations. They've used holiday markers as just prior to or just after the Thanksgiving holiday, they'll shut it down. And then working up to the Easter holiday, making sure that it's heated by the weekend of Easter or the weekend before, we would work into that. And usually it's about a 4 to 5 day period that we need to bring it from whatever the ambient temperature is outside and the temperature of the water. It takes us about 4 days, 3 to 4, to get it up to temperature.
And I assume they just do the pool. Spas would stay
Yeah,
open.
the spas are going to remain, or propose to remain year-round.
Okay. All right, we can move that discussion further down the road.
I think we need some, I think we need to get a better figure on how much we would save and maybe only cut it down for 3 months or something. That's a big discussion that we need to have.
Yeah, we need to understand the impact of
Yes.
what does 1 degree of change mean?
Yeah, we haven't done a deep dive on that to get those details yet, but we know we're going to need to.
My second question is to you, Chuck, on line 49, the printing and copying for $36,000. I don't know if the Finance Committee would do that or if Jim Morgan and his staff would do it, but was there any kind of evaluation of outsourcing that work as opposed to doing it in-house?
Referring to the IT services?
No, I'm referring to printing and copying on line 49, $36,000.
Yeah, I can talk to that if you'd like.
Go ahead, Jim.
That already is considering outsourcing. We outsource as much as we possibly can. And the lion's share of the expense on that line is outsourced copying for mailings and things like that. We're preparing for this budget mailing, which includes all the disclosures. It's actually, I think, our most expensive mailing of the year.
Okay.
That's outsourced.
Okay.
But we also do a lot of in-house copying as well with the copy machine that we have.
Right.
And we have, with the new lease, we'll have 4,000 black and white, but every copy black and white beyond that, there's a charge for it. And 100% of the color copies there's a charge for that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else from the board? All right, at this point, we will move into member questions. I've got the sheets here that you all have turned in. A few have come up while they were presenting, and I'm just going through them in the order I received them. So first up would be Howard Weiser.
So, since the presentation, my percentages that I had on the questions.
Howard,
changed.
can you again restate your name and your address?
Howard Weiser.
Each speaker as you come up, please. Thank you.
Howard Weiser, 4305 Cali Lampra. So, a couple of questions. One, I once attended a meeting last year, and I thought I saw that the board was actually paying the real estate taxes on the golf course. Is that correct?
That came at the last, I believe, last board meeting. Chuck addressed that.
That was came up in their December funding request.
Right.
So why are we paying, we don't own the course. Why are we paying the real estate taxes on the golf course? You're saying the county is coming to us and saying, you Colony Homeowners Association, you owe us these taxes?
I can answer that. The court order to put the receiver in place included all expenses for the golf course, including taxes.
Well, that has to be excluded.
So, well, we don't dictate to the judge how that receivership's going to work.
The judge obviously doesn't know about this.
If I could finish.
Go ahead.
What comes of it, if the taxes weren't paid, the receiver shuts the doors. So that's the difference. And if that's the direction the community and the board wanted to take it, then that's what would ultimately happen. But the board is acting based on what that order calls for. So that's the simple answer to it.
Ridiculous. Second thing is, on the top side over here, the total expenses are increasing by $791,000. The golf course subsidy is $304. That's about 40%. 40% of our new budget goes to golf course expenses. Now, the point I have here is not on the question, because while I'm sitting there, all of a sudden, maybe the light bulb went off. I'm not sure. But last year, people voted to buy the golf course, okay? And that was approved, and everybody heard $2,000 up front to buy the golf course. This is saying that when we buy this golf course, we have to make up $300,000 worth of expenses every year. So what you're saying is, we're going to take over ownership. We're going to be hiring maybe a golf course management company, a golf course consulting company, all sorts of stuff like that. And we are going to make up a $300,000 deficit. If we don't make up that $300,000 deficit, we take over ownership, and every year this golf course is in our budget. We're going to be paying $10, $20, $30, $40 extra per month every year, on and on and on and on.
I'll go ahead and take that question. No, we would not be. If we interviewed 4 different golf management companies. All of them were adamant this course can be profitable. It cannot be profitable the way it is right now. Unfortunately, the judge took away from us the ability to have the current owners put a cash infusion into it. A cash infusion is what needs to be put into here, and it's a lot of money to turn it from a golf course that is in bad condition to a product that people want to come and pay for. If you get this score, each golf course company told us if you get the course in the shape it needs to be, people will come, people will pay, it will make money. So we would not be paying that $300,000 a year. What you're seeing now is really low play because of the course, because of the condition that the course is in. So that's the difference there. Right now, this is just to keep the course open because, as you stated, yes, the vote passed. The community said we want to try to own the course. The only way we can do that now, because the court's taken a different direction than any of us anticipated.
How many people who voted to buy the golf course realized that they weren't just paying $2,000 up front?
That's.
I wonder how many of them would like to take their vote back right now.
So the figures on that still haven't changed. If you go the low end and let property values, if they only go down by $10,000 or by 10%, which for an average home of $500,000 is $50,000 per home. We, as a board, are trying to protect the community decision to own it and to protect $79 million worth of homeowners' equity. Homeowners' equity that people need as, they take out home equity loans, they take out reverse mortgages. Life happens, they move into assisted livings. We need to, what's that?
Who estimates that equity?
Who estimates the equity? It's 10%. That's $50,000 times 1,586. And that's on a low end from most of the publications. Okay, yeah, I'm just answering the question here. So that's the reasoning behind it. It comes out to $79 million. That is a significant amount for this community. And different people depend on that equity. And we are doing our best to protect that equity. Okay, next question is, there's another one, thank you. Jeff Sherburne. Jeff, you here? There he is.
Jeff Sherburne, 40500 Via Francisco. and I've discussed this with Bruce and Chuck before, I'm really concerned about the owner's first right of redemption.
Yep.
Even if we prevail in getting the foreclosure, he still has, and his attorney in his brief stated that he's going to be looking at exercising that. And the way it looks to me, we're spending all this money, and what's going to happen, even if we do prevail in the lawsuit, he can still buy the property back, and then he's in control of the property. And then, I didn't ask you.
Keep going. Keep going.
Anyway, that's just my real concern.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and answer that one. First off, he's right. February 24th is the date where the terms of the foreclosure get settled. The biggest issue at stake is the right of redemption, and that's what we're fighting for. We are, if you've read the briefings, we're proposing that the only way to have a right of redemption on a performance deed of trust is through performance. This is not there's no financial lien against it. This is different than other standard foreclosures. We believe that it's only through performance that you can redeem a performance deed of trust. Therefore, we have some golf experts that will be coming in for us, and they will be stating what it will take to perform to meet the deed of trust. There will be an amount attached to that. I'll just throw out an amount. It's just a round figure. Let's just say it takes $2 million to get this course back up to where it needs to be. We believe that's where you enter at to start talking. Now, will they want to put $2 million back into it and put it in escrow account? And the judge would say, okay, receiver, you manage that escrow account until this course is up to speed. If they do that, yes, they would get the course back, but we are also arguing that the performance deed of trust stays in place, and that was in the briefings also. So that's where we're at on it, Jeff. It's, I wish I could tell you what the judge is going to do. I can't, but the one thing we are trying to do is take our best shot at making sure that we protect the equity inside the colony here. Dee Dee Ramella?
Dee Ramella, via.
Want to pull the microphone down? So, there you go.
I'm usually pretty loud. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Dee Dee Ramella, and I live at Via Malagas. I had to think of where I live. Okay, I just want to make sure I understand this. The HOA board can continue to increase the monthly dues by 20%, which is the max allowable, without a vote. Plus, they can levy a special assessment of 5% on the operating budget every year without a vote. In simple terms, this means to me that the HOA fees are $270, and you can go up to $54, making it $324 instead of $320, as you've suggested. The next increase could be another 20%, making it a $64 increase, bringing it to $384, and this can go on and on and on. Now, my understanding that this is to help fund the golf course. Why are we funding something we don't even own yet? That's my first question. I'm going to ask the two questions I have real quick. The other thing is that I find that this is not to do with the fees. When people go to apply to join the committees, they're usually join committees because they have a background on it or they're familiar with what they're trying to join. And I'm finding that what happens with some of these people, they don't get accepted because they have to be approved and checked out by the board. And I'm wondering why that is. These committees should be made of the local homeowners and not like an old boys club. It should be of the local residents here to be on these committees, to be able to offer their services and actually learn some things. And I'm not finding that out. I'm finding out that it's like a clique that gets on these committees, and I'm not happy with that.
Okay.
That's my other complaint.
All right. I'll I'll go ahead and take this. And the first one is, why are we doing this? Why are we giving money to a golf course we don't own yet? Again, we had a vote, the community expressed interest in owning it. The only way we have a chance to purchase that golf course is to keep it open. If it goes fallow, then we're done, because it will take a couple million just to start to get it back to where you could open it. And we're not authorized to, we can't go back and ask for another 2 or 3 million on top of the other 3 million, whatever it is that we're collecting. So that's the reason we're trying to take the best shot at it. And it's a very low cost. If you think about it, it's $16 a month, which percentage-wise is big, but it's what, 160, so $192 a year per household to try to protect $50,000 in equity.
But it's 20% on top of the current.
Understand. Okay. Yeah, I get that.
Well, wait a minute, just for clarity, there's a misunderstanding. The golf course at $16 is not considered a special assessment this year. A special assessment would be approached entirely differently. This is a part of the assessment increase. It's part of that 20% you were talking about. Okay, so it's included in that. Okay. So it's not on top of it.
But this can go on every year until we have.
But you're absolutely right. And it's not something that would be popular for the board to do, any board for that matter. What you were talking about is the law. The law allows for that. If there are associations that may have to exercise that maximum. This, I think I stated this previously. If I didn't at the last workshop, I'll say it tonight. This is a unique year. It's a perfect storm of circumstances that have converged on itself. And it is manifesting into what you see in this year's budget. Next year may be entirely different based on what happens with the golf course. If worst case scenario, if things go south, it goes back to the owner of the golf course, and we just have to deal with the where things lie at that time. That $16 increase is no longer needed to send over to the golf course. So that would be considered the next year in the budget.
So you're saying the HOA won't go up?
I'll never say the HOA won't go up, because that, with inflation alone, if anybody believes that your HOA will never go up, you're fooling yourself. It can't be that way. The communities that are able to go for years without increasing their assessment either have very little cost, overhead, or they're so conservative in their budgeting already where they're so far ahead, they're taking too much money from you that they don't need to increase their assessment. Over the years, this board and through the committee's recommendations, we have been tightening the belt of the association so tight that, and also using equity to offset the assessment, that we're now maxed out. And so that's part of that perfect storm I'm talking about. We're out of equity, excess equity, to offset your assessment. You've got the golf course issue, we don't want it to close. We've got inflation that's going through the roof. And it's like, what do? Do you start reducing services? Do you start cutting costs that will affect your experience here? I understand. Yeah, those are decisions the board can make. But it's going to affect you noticeably if you do that.
The higher the HOA fees, the less people want to move in. We've got homes right now.
Well, that point could be argued. That point could be argued by again, many associations that have much higher assessments than what we experience here. So,
okay, let me move on to the second half of the question, and it was about the committees.
Yes.
So the way it works, and Jim, you correct me at the end of this if I'm wrong here. The way, if somebody wants to be on a committee, they apply for it, they turn in their sheet. Then you actually go through an interview process with the committee itself. The committee will look at it, do the skills match? Is it someone that's a team player? Is it someone that can work well in our environment so we can be productive? Just like you would any other interview. And then they submit their selection. If there's multiple people, they'll submit their selection to the board, and the board approves or denies. So I haven't seen one that, at least since I've been on the board, I've only been on a year, I can't think of one that we've turned down that the committee has brought to us. Okay, good.
And just a quick follow-up on the 20% increase. The 20% is including the $16 increase. We're not going to increase another 16, so it's not going to be 600,000 next year. So, you know, we're not going to have a big increase. I'm saying if we had to go another year with the golf course, we already have the 300,000, that $16 increase in there. So it's not going to go up another $16 next year. It's already in there. So if it happens to go up 10%, it might go up $3, but it's not going to be another 20% increase.
All right, Glenn Bosworth.
Thank you. I'm Glenn Bosworth. I live on Via Agua Dulce, 40253. So, got some problems. The May election was void. It was void because it was a 51% election. Paragraph or Article 18.1 of the CC&Rs requires a 55% majority for any annexation, and you can't convince me any way in hell this is not an annexation. You buy a golf course, that's an annexation, folks. You can call it amendment, you can put lipstick on a pig, it's an annexation. It's either a de facto annexation or an actual annexation. Under any aspect of the law, it's going to be held to be an annexation. Therefore, 55% is required. You had 52.7%. You didn't pass. This election is void. Now, you need another vote. For those who have mortgages on their property, you need a 67% majority because they're at greater risk on something like this. And that's in 19.6.2, Article 19.6.2 of our CC&Rs. 67%, so you have to have two votes, one for the entire population for all 1,600 or roughly 1,600 homes, and then a separate one for people who have mortgages. And there's about 1,000 of those. And that has to pass by 67%, a supermajority. And this board, the last board, which a lot of you people were on the last board, completely failed to apply that. And if you look at the video of the question towards Sue, her eyes are blinking about 100 miles an hour, which is a strong indication she's lying, but she says, we looked at that and we decided to go a different direction, 51%. That's not valid, folks. This election is void from the onset. You did not get 55% and you did not have a vote for mortgage holders. Now, we'll go over Article 20 also. Article 20 provides, and we've never had this discussion in front of a board, but I've read Article 20. And you all know I'm a JD, so I understand how these things are written. Now, Article 20 says all of the expenses of the golf course, the restaurant, and the pro shop are the expenses now of the common expenses. That's you folks. That's all of us. That's the HOA. Now, there's not a single word mentioned about the income. And we've been represented from day one that that income goes to an LLC to be formed. And that's where the income's going to stay for the golf course, for the clubhouse, for the pro shop, and for the restaurant. It's all going into a separate entity. We don't get any offset for the expenses of the golf course, the restaurant, the pro shop. Now you guys can say, oh, that's wrong, Glenn. We would never do that to you. It's done. Read Article 20. It's very clear. It is unequivocal that those expenses are the expenses of every homeowner here. There's nothing that says we get any benefit of the income of those entities. Now, another thing. I met a young lady here this week who
Let's try to
represented...
keep this within 3 minutes.
No, there's no timer. Nobody else has been timed. You're the first...
You're the only one that's gone on this long.
I'm the only person that you now put on a timer. Nobody else has been put on a timer.
You are officially the first person on a timer.
What? I need to shut up. No, I have a First Amendment right. There is no timer. Now you put a timer up.
Take a minute and finish, please.
I met a young lady here who represented that she moved into this place.
It's getting close.
Representing that she's a homeowner. And she's already working at the golf course because we're trying to get the golf course going again. Yeah, I've heard about that. She's not a homeowner. She's a relative of one of you guys. And she's given preferential treatment. And she hopes to be running the bar at the restaurant.
I have no idea.
So I want to know who that is. I want to know who she's living with and who she's related to.
So do we.
No, I'm not making stuff up.
This is irrelevant to the budget.
I've got the
Let's
text
move on
in
to
my
your other
phone.
questions.
I've got the text in my phone between her and I.
Thank you.
Think about it, folks.
I will correct a misrepresentation. Most of these people were not on the board the last board. Everybody is new except myself and Dell. This is a new board. Article 20 is in effect if we get hold of the property, period. We've read it. You guys got to understand. Number one, we pay our attorneys a lot of money, and we have not lost a court case with them. They understand this stuff. They help us put it together. I'm a layperson. I need, as a board, hang on. As a board, none of us are experts in every area. We need to rely on professional help. We hire professional people to look at our books. We hire professional people to tell us about the golf course. We hire professional lawyers to walk us through the steps so we protect not only ourselves, but every dollar that you guys pay, because any lawsuit that we lose goes back to every single homeowner. Our insurance rates will go up for every single homeowner if we lose. It is worth our investment. We get good legal representation. They guide us along the way. You may disagree with it, but it's not like anybody up here has a conspiracy and this deal about, I have no idea what you're talking about with somebody, a relative trying to get a job over there, and that's irrelevant to a budget anyway. I'm going to move back to budget questions.
Mr. President.
I apologize.
Bruce. Yes. This is a budget workshop. So
Right,
can
that's
we,
what I
can we
said.
just stay on topic and
I'm
we'll
moving
talk
back
about,
to a budget.
Yeah, we'll just talk about the budget.
Yes. Okay, Tom Bracken. I've got, there's a lot left here.
My name's Tom Bracken. I live at 24197 Corte-Cordova. Something I don't understand. About April of last year, the board voted to give $400,000 to the golf course. And when you guys took it to court, the judge turned it down, says you can't give that money to us, to the golf course, if everybody remembers that.
As a loan.
Yeah, that was considered a loan, and they wouldn't allow them to encumber the property.
So we just give it to them.
That's the
and then
difference.
yeah. And another thing is, you want to give $304,000 to the golf course, and we already gave them, or what we'll give them, close to $300,000 before this year is up. Chuck, is that right?
Thereabouts.
Thereabout. Yeah, that's what I guessed it will be. And you're talking about cutting the swimming pool off for the golf course, and it's our entities? I mean, that's got to be a laugh to you guys, if that's how the board thinking today. And another thing is, before the election, every time there was a meeting, Bruce, you've talked on the golf course, everything is fine, dandy, so on the line. Chuck got on, changed the board, and all of a sudden, we're broke almost. We're giving everything to the golf course, and it's the right thing to do. Don't you think we should have a vote on that $304,000 plus? End of the year, we'll give them over probably close to $750,000, and we can't get our patio fixed, our swimming pool deck. And you said you're going to get done. Is it going to get done this year? I doubt it. You know, I think it's just a stall game. I think you guys are really beating the bush of cutting that gas off in that swimming pool entity, and that's going to improve the cost of our houses to
Tom,
go up.
hold on. First, I'm going to just hold you there for a minute. We have not made any decisions about the pool. We just heard for one of the first times, we're hearing the recommendations from the Finance Committee. The board has not had discussion on it. The board has not considered anything yet. We'll do that in open session.
But the only way we can talk and tell you not to discuss it, Bruce, is to say something to you now. Because once you guys get in your meeting, you guys will vote on it. And don't tell me you won't, you'll vote on it. If we don't talk about it first, you say, well, nobody talked about it. And I know that, because every time you talk during when Walt was president, I'm not beating Walt, but and you talked about the golf course, everything was great. And now all of a sudden it went to hell. What happened? Because Chuck got on the board?
I can tell you.
You know, and bless him for being on the board. Believe me. Bless him.
Tom, this budget, Tom, the association's not broke.
I know, I never said.
Let me just comment.
It's going down.
Well,
if we don't increase $50, it takes a big hit.
The association maintains what we call a safety net that is covering we're allowed to have enough money ahead of your assessments so we can pay bills.
Correct.
And it also covers unexpected rainy day issues that might come up. This budget protects that. That increase for the golf course line, that subsidy, if the board didn't address that this year, that safety net would absolutely be, if not gone, it would be heavily depleted. So this budget is to protect, to keep you well into the black.
I understand that part. That's why you have to do this. But why don't we have a breakdown on the other golf course budget line item that was a golf course that was given the money for the lawsuits and stuff? Why don't we ever see how that was spent? Does anybody keep records of it?
I'm not sure I understand the question exactly.
Well, there was don't hold me to it, $350,000 on the golf course that went into a budget line item for the golf course, and they spent the attorney bills on it.
Oh, what you're referring to is the golf course settlement fund?
That is what I'm referring to.
That was considered equity.
I understand.
And the board put that in a special account so that it wasn't mixed with the other equity, so that it didn't get just spent on anything.
I agree.
They want to put it back into the golf course if it was needed.
I agree on that.
Yeah.
Why don't we see
Which it was needed,
why
by the
don't we
way.
get to see how it was spent?
I think Chuck has given a full breakdown of
I had a
that.
slide, I think, in October. I could bring it back for the next meeting.
I mean, the whole thing from the date we got all the money.
Yeah,
and what
I
we
have
went
that.
Yeah, we have a
I have
full
something
accounting
like
of
that. I could share it.
And anyway, and then you want to cut the swimming pool and give the golf course, and then you give the board a increase of 15% in their budget. You give them an increase, but you want to cut the swimming pool. I said you guys want to cut the pool. You brought.
We haven't even talked about it, Tom.
That was a
All right,
recommendation.
settle down.
made.
Everybody settle down.
Pat, you.
Tom, wrap it up, Tom.
Okay.
Tom.
You brought it up.
Tom,
So just.
I want to tell you, I resent you telling me how I'm going to vote.
Well, okay.
You have no idea.
Resent all you want.
You have no
Okay,
idea.
let's end this.
We'll see about it. We'll see.
Let's end this. If I'm reading this right, Rich Perry, I think, or something Perry on Francisco. Rich Perry.
Richard Perry. I live at 40440 Via Francisco. And the biggest concern I have is why they elected to have an LLC instead of a C Corp or an S Corp on the golf course.
I'll answer it real quick, but I'm going to move on because it's not a budget question. The reason is, and that this goes back to the original thing, is it annexed? No, it was intentional not to annex it, because if it ever comes to the point where if we own the course and we find it's too much of an anchor, it is a whole lot easier to sell that property when it is not annexed.
Well, actually, I'd like to tell you that it should have been an LLC, should have not been chosen, because nobody in this whole room can elect who's going to be on the golf course board. We will not have the right to look at your books because you won't show them to us. It's a very limited liability. It should have been an S Corp or a C Corp, which you can. As a nonprofit, we're allowed to own a profit business, so it's not going to affect that. And another thing, back in 2002 and 3, this whole thing came up, and the people back then didn't want the golf course, and they lost, and the board had to pay them. Same thing. And guess what? It was also argued back and then.
Hold on, let's stop this. This has nothing to do with the budget.
Okay.
I'll reply real quick. The vote did pass, from what I understand. And the group that had, the Agul group, did not win anything against the HOA. It was against the
Developer.
the developer. So those are separate issues totally.
Yeah,
But let's move on from this. We got a lot of questions up here that have to do with the budget.
Okay. Then how about your partnership that was going to buy this golf course and your partners bailed out and left you?
No.
What happened there?
They wouldn't sell it to us. In fact, her words to me were, you need to move on.
Because, you know, this golf course has never made any money since the day it was conceived.
I agreed.
And it's
You know
not
what?
gonna, it's not going to make any money now.
We've
And
been through that
the
over in 12
receivership
town
has
hall
also
meetings.
said, if you receive the receipt.
Thank you.
It said, the receiver says that it's a failed operation. So,
It has nothing to do with the budget. This is a budget workshop, and we have a lot of budget questions. All right. Maria Wargacki, did I pronounce that right? I'm sorry? All right. Thank you. Jim Nash?
Jim Nash, 40322 Via Siena. And I'm addressing the board first of all, as a resident, but secondly, as someone who's been involved with the budget process here for the past 10 years. First on the Finance Committee as a volunteer, then as a board member, then as treasurer. And I want to voice my support for the budget that's been presented to you by the committee. I know the committee's done their homework. I know they've done their due diligence, done their research, the time and effort that they put into it. and I think it's totally justified. At the same time, I'm not happy with the $50 increase in dues. I think everybody in this room, including the board, is probably not happy about it.
That's right.
But this budget is realistic, and would be the responsible thing for the board to do, to adopt this budget or something very close to it. I attended last week's budget workshop, which was a little more lengthier than this presentation. A lot more questions were raised by the board, and some very good ones. And I hope the board would consider some of the suggestions that have been made with respect to the non-essential items that are in the budget that were brought up by the committee. Maybe it's only $3, but it's a step in the right direction to kind of bring in the cost a little bit. And at the, I think it's been brought up here before too, this $16 that's associated with the golf course subsidy. I truly believe that's going to be a temporary part of the dues. I think Mr. Ross brought this up at the workshop and questioned, how long was this going to be? And nobody really knows. But I think at some point in time, at the time when the association is successful in acquiring, renovating, and properly managing a golf course, that subsidy will go away. Now this increase of $50 per month is $600 per year. I think we all recognize that's going to hit pretty hard on everybody's budget, your own personal budget. That's on top of what we've already experienced on our own personal budgets with grocery costs, fuel costs, utility costs. And then, as we've heard here tonight, the special assessment is going to be on top of that. That's another $1,995 that will likely be collected during this coming year. Having said all that, I think the future of the colony this year and in future years depends on adopting this budget. And I sincerely believe that's the direction we need to go. And I have no golf course questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam Fisher? Oh, there she is.
I have a solution that I want to ask about. So obviously it's...
State your name and address.
Pamela Fisher, 40693 via Jalapa. The 30% of the budget is administrative. And, the reality is costs keep going up. And we got to figure this out because it's not sustainable. So, probably a third of our budget's going to the gate, a third is the landscaping and watering, and a third for administration. And we have a good life here, and we are well taken care of by the administration. But my question is, on the nonprofits that Terry and I have served on over the last 30 years, schools, museums, lots of facilities this size, the janitorial and maintenance staff is about half the size of the one we have here. But we have a ton of setup and tear down. We are social intensive. And so my suggestion is, could we not bill those hours for setup and tear down to the individual clubs? So those of us who are going to the wine club or to a dinner dance, that the $10 per person, it could go into that to fund it. And I think that could create a couple $100,000 a year to bring our administration costs down. So it's just a suggestion and my thought.
Thank you. Bob Lepore, did I say that right?
24002 via Studo, and just had a line item question about the golf course. Because I saw the line item for our liability insurance in the regular budget. Does that include the golf course, and are we covered in case a tragedy would happen on that golf course?
Yeah, the golf course has their own insurance. It's separate from ours.
Who pays for that insurance? Whoever's going to.
It comes out of their revenues,
Theirs?
and I'm sure, yeah, as
But
we.
what if they weren't able to? They had like on a golf course accident in Florida.
Mhm.
It was an $18 million payout because a child fell out of a golf cart and had an injury that is going to last them for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that scares me, is what we don't know what we're actually agreeing to. Would that be put on the homeowners here if we have something like that?
As long as we do not own the course, we are not liable for that stuff.
But who would they come?
Like I mentioned earlier about the order that was given to the receiver to pay the taxes and other fees, it also includes the insurance. With that being said, you're subsidizing the golf course right now on a monthly basis, so whatever shortfalls, and if insurance, their premium payment was part of that, indirectly you may have paid what their premium is, or a portion of it. But it is on that operation. It does not come over to the association at this point.
Who decides on it? A judge?
The
Would this
judge
go to
made
court?
that call, yes.
Could a judge say, this is the Colony golf course and you owe this? They can't pay it, we got to get it from somebody.
No, it wouldn't work that way.
How are we,
Yeah.
what's our protection as homeowners is all I want to know.
I'm not sure the
Yeah,
exposure you're
I guess I'm saying
trying to.
If that happened to us and we had to pay $8 million, and the people who run in the course, they couldn't afford it, they would have to come after us.
No, not at all.
No, they'd go after the owners of the golf course.
Right.
They're still on title.
Yep.
Okay. I hope that's how it, if
That's the
something
way
like
that works
happens.
today.
I work for a school district, and I saw them paying out $4, $5, $8 million. If we didn't have something that was handicapped, properly done, we had to pay on that stuff too. So I could see that kind of stuff happen. I know that you should consider the little children on the golf carts, because they're not made for little kids. They'll fall out.
Yep.
But this kid happened, I guess he was autistic too, so
okay,
it made it even worse.
Well, thanks,
That's
Bob.
all I have.
Okay, we've got three more here. Merrill Hubbard?
Yes, I'm Merrill Hubbard. I live at 40264 Corte Peralta. And I just have one question. I apologize if it's already been answered, because I had to go out a couple of times. If and when the golf course, we get it and it's profitable, is there going to be any kind of reimbursement to Colony members for the monies they've put out for this?
So I'll take a first shot at it.
All right.
That would be up to the board at that time and place. I know from a business perspective, as it starts to make profits, that you will want those profits turned back into the business to keep it profitable, to build amenities like a restaurant that everybody can use, that type of thing. But that would be to the discretion of the board, whoever the board is at that time and place, which would be a couple of years down the road.
You know, I'm just thinking in good faith. I totally understand. I was my own business, so I'm not that familiar with a lot of these business policies. But yeah, I get it. You would want to put it back in. But I think in good faith to the people that live here, maybe just keeping the dues as they are and not raising them 20% every year, you know, would be a gift.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
David Guerin, am I pronouncing that right? Garcia. Sorry, I don't read the writing so well.
My name is David Garcia. I own a couple of properties on Via Agua Dulce. I have been a part of this community for maybe 15 years, investing on one property or the other. I do not live here. I live at Bear Creek. At Bear Creek, they have similar conveniences. We have pools, gymnasiums, activities. I pay $280 a month where I live. You can pay as little as $240 a month if you live in the condominiums. They have their own pool areas. So there's a great disparity. I understand the differences in what's going on with the golf course and with what we do here. But over the years, for us colony property owners, investors, the costs keep going up. Now, I've been at Bear Creek for a few years. They don't seem to go up that often. I do attend HOA meetings, so I try to stay active with what's being done. It just doesn't seem right. 280 there, two different properties, I recognize that, but with a lot of similarities. So something has to change.
Thank you. And I just have one handed to me, Joanne. Last one here, Joanne Deacon. Oh, here she is.
Joanne Deacon, 40001 Corte Calanova, the best street in the colony. Hi, Mark. and Pat, we're both residents. Different subject. By the way, some of you are new residents, I know, and you haven't been here a number of years, but 6 years ago we had 0 increase in our maintenance fees. And then we had $3 increase in our maintenance fees. So we've had years that it reflects on what's going on in the world at the moment. And I just got my gas bill, so I know what's going on in the world. What I wanted to talk about was the board was going to consider the beauty salon. I don't use that beauty salon because I've been going to the same one outside for 20 years. But there are some issues I'd like to make sure you know. One, they cannot service people outside the colony, so they are limited only to the people who are in the colony.
Yep.
And that's a big, big difference. Also, there are more women in this colony than men. More women use that facility than men. So when you think about jacking up the price to the owner, please consider the women in this colony who use that service and the fact that he's limited to only people who are in the colony. Thank you.
Yep. And Joanne, thank you. We did have discussion last week. We're on board with you. We understand the impact. Okay, that brings us to, pure coincidence, but it's 7 o'clock. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for taking the time to come and listen and participate. I hereby adjourn the meeting.